Hey there, welcome back to Classic Cinema Chanel, where we peel back the curtain on the real stories behind your favorite stars. Today, we're diving into the world of Rick Harrison, the sharp-witted dealmaker from Pawn Stars, the show that made pawn shops cool. Now, you might have stumbled across wild rumors online claiming Rick is rotting away in ADX Florence, the Supermax prison, for crimes like money laundering or human trafficking. Let's clear the air right now. That's complete nonsense, straight-up fiction. The real story about Rick Harrison is way more gripping, and it's not about prison bars, it's about family. Specifically, a heart-wrenching legal battle with his own mother, Joanne Harrison, who sued him over control of the gold and silver pawn shop and family assets. This isn't just a lawsuit, it's a saga about loyalty, legacy, and the messy reality of fame. What happens when the family that built an empire together starts to fracture under the weight of success? So, settle in, maybe grab a coffee, and let's take a slow, deep dive into the Harrison family's journey, from the scrappy beginnings of Pawn Stars to the drama threatening their legacy. And stick around, because we want to hear your favorite Pawn Stars moment in the comments. Let's get into it. To understand the stakes of this family drama, we need to go back to 1989, when Richard Harrison, known to fans as the Old Man, and his wife, Joanne Harrison, opened the gold and silver pawn shop in Las Vegas. Picture it, a small, cluttered shop where locals pawned jewelry, electronics, or oddball items for quick cash. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a family affair. Richard, with his no-nonsense charm, mentored his son Rick, teaching him the art of spotting a treasure in a pile of junk. Rick wasn't just good at appraising, he was a natural storyteller. He could take a rusty old coin and weave a tale about its journey through history, making you feel like you were holding a piece of the past. That knack for storytelling caught the attention of TV producers. In 2009, the History Channel launched Pawn Stars, and it exploded into a global hit. Rick, Richard, Rick's son Corey, and their lovable sidekick Chum Lee turned every deal into a mini-drama, whether it was a Civil War sword or a vintage jukebox. The show didn't just showcase antiques, it showcased the Harrisons' chemistry, their banter, their heart. Here's something wild, Pawn Stars wasn't the Harrisons' brainchild. A producer wandered into the shop while hunting for reality show ideas and was blown away by Rick's charisma and the family's dynamic. Get this, Rick initially said no, thinking, who'd watch a show about a pawn shop? Lucky for us, he reconsidered, and Pawn Stars became a cultural juggernaut. But with fame came pressure to keep the shop running, to maintain their TV personas, and to hold the family together under the spotlight. Success, as the Harrisons would learn, comes with a cost. What's the first Pawn Stars episode that hooked you? Share your favorite deal or item in the comments, we're dying to know. Let's rewind to the early 2000s, when a personal tragedy set the stage for today's drama. Joanne Harrison, Rick's mother and the backbone of the family, fell into a coma and was rushed to the hospital. This was a dark time for the Harrisons, with uncertainty hanging over them like a storm cloud. During Joanne's recovery, according to court documents, Rick visited her and persuaded her to sign an agreement transferring 51% of her ownership in the gold and silver pawn shop to him. Joanne later claimed she wasn't fully aware of what she was signing, given her weakened state. Her husband, Richard, urged her to let it go, trusting Rick to steer the ship. At the time, it seemed like a practical move. Rick was the face of the shop, and Pawn Stars was on the horizon. But this moment planted a seed of distrust. Joanne, who'd poured her heart into the business, felt her role slipping away. Imagine being Joanne, a woman who helped build a family legacy, now sidelined during one of her most vulnerable moments. It's not hard to see why she might have felt betrayed, even if she didn't voice it right away. For Rick, he might have seen himself as protecting the business, not taking advantage. This is where good intentions can go wrong, creating rifts that fester over time. It's a human story, one that resonates with anyone who's navigated family dynamics. Joanne wasn't just a silent partner in the shop's early days. She was a powerhouse, handling bookkeeping and negotiating with customers with a finesse that rivaled Richard's. Old-timers at the shop still talk about how Joanne could turn down a bad deal with a smile, leaving sellers feeling valued despite walking away empty-handed. Her absence from the show's spotlight doesn't tell the full story of her impact. Have you ever had a family misunderstanding that snowballed? Share your story in the comments. It's okay, we're all family here. In 2018, the Harrison family faced their greatest loss. Richard Harrison passed away at 77 after a long illness. To fans, the old man was the gruff, lovable patriarch whose one-liners stole the show. To the family, he was the glue holding them together. His death wasn't just a personal tragedy, it was a turning point that exposed cracks in the Harrison foundation. After Richard's passing, Joanne inherited his 49% stake in the gold and silver pawn shop, making her a major shareholder. But according to Joanne, this is when things went south. She accused Rick of halting the regular payments she was owed from the shop's profits, payments critical for her medical care, which cost $15,000 a month due to her frail health. For Joanne, this wasn't just about money, it was about feeling cast aside by her own son. Richard's death didn't just leave an emotional void, it removed the family's mediator. He likely played a key role in keeping tensions in check, reassuring Joanne and guiding Rick. Without him, old wounds resurfaced and new ones formed. This is a classic tale of a family business unraveling after the loss of its anchor, something countless families can relate to, whether they're on TV or not. After Richard's death, Rick quietly created a small display in the shop for his father's favorite items, including a 19th-century pocket watch Richard called his Holy Grail. This corner was never shown on Pawn Stars, but it was Rick's private tribute to the man who taught him everything. It's a reminder that, despite the drama, Rick deeply valued his father's legacy. By 2022, Joanne Harrison, at 81, reached her breaking point. She filed a lawsuit against Rick, the gold and silver pawn shop, and related entities in Nevada State Court. This wasn't a quiet family spat, it was a public bombshell. The allegations were serious. Rick breached their contract by failing to provide transparent financial records. He allegedly mismanaged over $500,000 in cash and silver tied to family assets. Most shockingly, Joanne claimed Rick used her assets as collateral for a $3 million loan without her permission. Joanne demanded a court-ordered accounting of the shop's finances, a restraining order to stop Rick from selling or transferring assets, and the creation of a trust to safeguard her stake. This wasn't just about money, it was about reclaiming her voice in a business she helped build. Rick fired back, telling the Las Vegas Review-Journal, "These claims are untrue. I love my mother, and I believe she's being manipulated by others for their own agendas." He didn't name names, but his words hinted at outside influences stirring the pot. This lawsuit is a clash of perspectives. For Joanne, it's about justice, ensuring her contributions aren't erased. For Rick, it's a betrayal, a challenge to his leadership and integrity. What's heartbreaking is that both likely believe they're protecting the family legacy. It's a stark reminder that family disputes aren't about right or wrong, they're about hurt, trust, and the struggle to be heard. During the lawsuit's early days, the Pawn Stars crew reportedly faced tension on set. While the show kept filming, some staff noticed Rick was quieter than usual, spending more time in his office. One longtime employee shared, off the record, that Rick kept a photo of his parents on his desk, a subtle sign of the emotional toll the lawsuit was taking. This detail never made headlines, but it humanizes the man behind the TV persona. What do you think about this mother-son conflict? Who do you sympathize with more, Rick or Joanne? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Before we get to the fallout, let's take a moment to appreciate what Pawn Stars has meant to the world. This isn't just a show about buying and selling, it's a celebration of history, curiosity, and the stories hidden in everyday objects. Pawn Stars changed how we see pawn shops, turning them from shady storefronts into treasure troves of human experience. It inspired spin-offs, copycat shows, and even boosted tourism in Las Vegas, with fans flocking to the gold and silver pawn shop. The Harrisons became unlikely ambassadors of the American dream, a working-class family who turned grit and ingenuity into global fame. Rick, with his quick wit and encyclopedic knowledge, showed us that you don't need a fancy degree to be an expert, you just need passion. Corey and Chum Lee brought humor and relatability, while Richard's wisdom grounded it all. Together, they created a show that felt like family, even to viewers thousands of miles away. The magic of Pawn Stars lies in its authenticity. Unlike other reality shows with manufactured drama, the Harrisons' genuine bond shone through. That's why this lawsuit hits so hard. It threatens the image of unity that made the show special. But it also makes the Harrisons more human. Their struggles remind us that even TV families face real-world problems, from financial disputes to fractured relationships. Has Pawn Stars inspired you to hunt for antiques or visit a pawn shop? Share your story in the comments, and let's see who's caught the treasure hunting bug. The lawsuit doesn't just affect Rick and Joanne, it casts a shadow over Pawn Stars itself. Rick has long been the show's face, the guy who can appraise a Revolutionary War musket without breaking a sweat. But now, he's defending his reputation against allegations that could change how fans see him. The gold and silver pawn shop is still open, and Pawn Stars continues to air, but the drama raises tough questions. Can the business survive this turmoil? Will viewers still root for Rick? And can the Harrison family find a way back to each other? There's no public update on the lawsuit's outcome as of April 2025, leaving fans in suspense. But the impact is already felt. The show's future hinges not just on Rick's leadership but on whether the Harrisons can rebuild trust. If they can't, Pawn Stars risks losing the heart that made it a hit. Pawn Stars is more than a business, it's a legacy, a testament to the Harrisons' ability to turn the ordinary into the extraordinary. This lawsuit exposes the fragility of that legacy. Fame amplifies everything, from success to conflict, and the Harrisons are learning that the hard way. Yet, their story resonates because it's universal. Every family faces moments of division. What matters is how they move forward. Where do you see Pawn Stars in 5 years? Will it survive this drama? Share your predictions in the comments, and don't forget to like if you're rooting for the Harrisons. As we close this chapter, the Harrison story isn't defined by court filings or dollar signs, it's defined by the people at its core. Rick Harrison isn't a prisoner, but he's fighting a battle to preserve his family's legacy and, maybe, to reconnect with his mother. Joanne Harrison, at 81, is a warrior, standing up for her place in a story she helped write. And Richard Harrison, though no longer here, lives on in the values he instilled: hard work, curiosity, and love for family. The Harrisons remind us that fame and fortune are fleeting, but family is forever if you fight for it. Their saga shows that even the strongest bonds can fray, but they can also be mended with honesty and effort. I hope Rick and Joanne find peace, not just for themselves, but for the millions of fans who've welcomed Pawn Stars into their homes. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and share this video with your friends. And please, leave a comment. Do you believe Rick and Joanne can reconcile? What's your all-time favorite Pawn Stars moment? We can't wait to read your thoughts. See you next time, when we'll uncover another untold story behind the spotlight. Stay curious. Welcome to the glittering world of Rick Harrison, the star of Pawn Stars, a man whose charm and expertise turned a Las Vegas pawn shop into a global sensation. His mansion, nestled in the upscale suburbs, stood as a monument to his success, a place where history seemed to come alive. But on April 17, 2024, when FBI agents crossed its threshold, they didn't find a shrine to the past. They found a house of secrets, a chilling maze of hidden rooms, buried bodies, and a double life that would shock the world. This wasn't just a financial scandal, it was a descent into a nightmare, revealing a man who thrived in the shadows while smiling for the cameras. From a basement that became a tomb to a criminal empire spanning continents, the story of Rick Harrison is one of betrayal, deception, and unimaginable horror. Join us as we unravel the truth, a tale so dark it redefines everything you thought you knew about fame. The unraveling began quietly in 2022, with a routine IRS audit that few would have noticed. The target, gold and silver pawn shop, Rick Harrison's iconic business, a place where rare coins, vintage guitars, and ancient relics changed hands under the watchful eye of TV cameras. But something wasn't adding up. Cash payments, some as high as $50,000, appeared in the books with no invoices to back them up. Artifacts, like a 6th century Buddhist statue or a set of Egyptian relics, sat in storage, their origins unexplained. To the auditors, it smelled like tax evasion, a common enough issue for a business dealing in high-value goods. But Rick Harrison wasn't just any shop owner. He was a celebrity, a man whose encyclopedic knowledge and easy grin had made him a household name. Pawn Stars had run for over a decade, turning his shop into a tourist magnet and Rick into a symbol of the American dream. The idea that he could be involved in anything shady seemed far-fetched, even laughable. Yet, that very fame raised a question: if someone so visible was cutting corners, what else might they be hiding? The FBI took over, expecting a quick case. They combed through bank records and found a maze of transactions, money flowing to offshore accounts in Belize, Cyprus, and the British Virgin Islands, only to return as personal investments. The sums were eye-popping: $4.7 million in less than 2 years, far beyond what a pawn shop could generate. Then came the artifacts. A database check revealed some matched items stolen from museums in the Middle East, Asia, and Europe, treasures looted during violent heists or smuggled from war zones. A Chinese ceramic bowl in Rick's inventory had been reported missing from a Beijing collection. An Armenian lion sculpture had vanished from a Syrian dig site. The plot thickened when Interpol flagged Rick's name in connection to artifacts tied to armed robberies in Jordan and Syria. This was no longer about taxes, it hinted at money laundering, perhaps even ties to the global black market. Agents began tailing Rick, watching his shop and his home. They noticed odd patterns: late-night deliveries to his mansion, unmarked trucks dropping off crates with no labels, and visitors who seemed to vanish from the radar. The deeper they dug, the clearer it became: Rick Harrison was no innocent pawn. He was a player in a game much bigger and much darker than anyone had suspected. On April 17, 2024, the FBI arrived at Rick Harrison's mansion, a sprawling estate in West Las Vegas, once celebrated in lifestyle magazines as a paradise for history lovers. From the outside, it was flawless: iron gates, a pristine lawn, and a pool that sparkled under the Nevada sun. But as agents stepped inside, an unsettling chill greeted them. The air felt heavy, the rooms too quiet. Entire sections were locked or draped in thick curtains, as if the house itself was hiding something. Their search led to the basement, where a newly built brick wall caught their attention. Breaking through, they found a body, decomposed, wrapped in a tarp, with no ID. The discovery was jarring, but it was only the start. Over the next 2 days, forensic teams uncovered 24 more bodies, concealed in secret compartments, buried beneath hollow floors, and tucked into spaces that didn't appear on the mansion's blueprints. 25 victims in all, some dead for over 5 years. There remains a silent accusation in the darkness. Who were they? As investigators pieced together identities, a grim pattern emerged. Many had crossed paths with Rick, collectors who'd haggled over artifacts, dealers who'd frequented his shop, even a journalist who'd asked too many questions. A vintage watch found with one body belonged to a collector missing since 2019. Another victim was Valerie Chen, a Canadian reporter who'd been digging into the murky world of artifact trading before vanishing in Nevada. Each name added weight to a horrifying truth: these weren't random deaths. They were targeted. The most disturbing find came in a hidden room deep underground, locked with biometric scanners and soundproofed from the world. The FBI called it the Gallery, a twisted archive of Rick's crimes. Inside were photos of the victims, their belongings, rings, watches, driver's licenses, displayed like relics in a museum. A handwritten journal, penned by Rick, detailed his thoughts with chilling precision. He knows too much, can't take the chance, she's a problem, but the reward outweighs the risk. Each entry read like a business memo, reducing lives to liabilities. The mansion wasn't just a home, it was a fortress of deception, modified with illegal renovations to hide its secrets. Compartments had been built into walls, floors hollowed out to conceal evidence. The scale of it stunned even seasoned agents. How could a man so public, so scrutinized, maintain such a horrifying operation? The answer lay in the chilling realization that Rick hadn't just lived there. He'd turned his home into a graveyard, a place where his darkest impulses thrived unseen. The bodies were only the beginning. As the FBI cracked into Rick's encrypted devices, phones, laptops, private servers, they uncovered a digital web that stretched across the globe. Rick Harrison wasn't just a killer, he was the architect of a multi-million-dollar artifact smuggling empire, one that turned stolen history into profit with ruthless efficiency. The operation was a masterclass in secrecy. Artifacts were looted from unstable regions, Syria, Iraq, Egypt, where war and chaos left museums vulnerable. These treasures, from ancient sculptures to sacred manuscripts, were funneled through middlemen in Europe, passing through hubs like Paris, Geneva, and Brussels. Their final destination was the US, where gold and silver pawn shops served as a front. Rick, armed with his TV star credibility, transformed these illicit goods into legitimate collectibles, selling them to ultra-wealthy buyers for staggering sums. An estimated $19 million between 2016 and 2023. Messages from Rick's devices revealed his inner circle, criminals like Farouk and Osman, both wanted by Interpol for looting Syria's cultural heritage during the Civil War. Rick wasn't a passive buyer. He negotiated deals, set prices, and planned smuggling routes, ensuring each artifact could pass as legal. He was the gatekeeper, the man who made dirty money clean. But his role came with a brutal catch: anyone who threatened the operation disappeared. The mansion's victims told that story. Javier Montes, a Spanish collector, vanished after questioning a statue's origins. His body was among the 25. Valerie Chen, the journalist, had written about loopholes in the artifact trade. Her remains were found in the basement. Rick's journal put it bluntly: to keep the gold, you bury the diggers deep. Those who got too close, whether by curiosity or conscience, paid with their lives. The FBI cataloged 147 smuggled artifacts linked to Rick, including a Buddha statue stolen from India, bronze vessels from China's Zhou dynasty, and an Egyptian Book of the Dead looted from Luxor. Each was a crime against history, sold under the guise of expertise. Rick's fame was his shield. Who would question a man who taught America about the past? But the truth was undeniable: he wasn't just part of the underworld. He was its kingpin. What makes this case so haunting isn't the crimes alone, it's Rick Harrison himself, a man who lived two lives with chilling precision. On Pawn Stars, he was a folk hero, a savvy dealer with a knack for storytelling, turning dusty relics into lessons about the past. His smile was disarming, his knowledge vast, making viewers feel like they were learning alongside a friend. But off-screen, Rick was something else entirely, a predator who didn't just kill but curated his victims' memories as trophies of his power. His journals peeled back the mask. "Everyone has a secret museum," he wrote. "Mine holds bodies, but they don't lie." These weren't confessions born of guilt, they were statements of purpose, written by a man who saw his crimes as a twisted extension of his empire. He didn't act in chaos or panic. Every move was deliberate, every life taken a calculated step to protect his world. The gallery, with its photos and keepsakes, wasn't just evidence, it was Rick's private hall of fame, a record of his dominance. Psychologists called him an organized killer, defined by intellect and control. Rick didn't crave violence for its own sake, he craved mastery over artifacts, money, and people. A collector who asked too many questions wasn't a person, they were a glitch to be erased. A journalist sniffing around his deals wasn't a threat, she was an obstacle to be removed. His need for control extended to his public image, meticulously crafted to deflect suspicion. He was never late, never flustered, always the polished star. Rick's past offered no obvious clues. He grew up ordinary, with no history of abuse or mental illness. Teachers remembered a boy who hated being wrong, but nothing hinted at the darkness to come. Fame didn't create the monster, it gave him cover, letting him operate in plain sight. Fans saw a man who'd built an empire from nothing, proof that smarts and grit could win. When the truth broke, it wasn't just shock, it was betrayal, a wound to the trust millions had placed in him. Rick hadn't just deceived the world, he'd weaponized its admiration, turning reality TV into the perfect alibi. By March 2025, Rick Harrison's fate was sealed. After a sprawling investigation involving 70 agents, he faced 29 charges: first-degree murder for 25 victims, artifact smuggling, money laundering, and running a global crime network. The trial, held in Nevada's federal court, gripped the nation. Dubbed the reality TV trial of the century, it drew hundreds of reporters and round-the-clock coverage from CNN to CBS. The prosecution's case was crushing. Rick Harrison built his empire on blood, lead prosecutor Maria Lopez declared, presenting a mountain of evidence: the bodies, the journals, encrypted messages, and videos of Rick handling victims' belongings with icy detachment. Witnesses: a shaken ex-employee, an auctioneer who'd forged documents, a friend of Valerie Chen, tightened the noose. The defense scrambled, alleging a media witch hunt and even suggesting mental illness, but FBI evaluations found Rick fully aware, with no psychiatric issues. Rick's decision to speak for himself was a spectacle. For 40 minutes, he denied everything, his voice steady, his eyes locked on the jury. "I'm a businessman, not a killer," he insisted. But his calm only unnerved them more. After 7 weeks, the jury returned a unanimous verdict: guilty on all counts. The sentence was life without parole, his mansion and shop seized, his wealth, built on crime, confiscated. As he left the courtroom, Rick showed no emotion, a man whose secrets had finally caught up with him. The aftermath was profound. Pawn Stars was erased from the airwaves, its legacy poisoned. The gold and silver pawn shop became a pariah, its doors locked, its fame a memory. Rick's family fractured, his son Corey, a show regular, faced relentless questions about what he knew, his denials drowned out by public doubt. The scandal rippled beyond Las Vegas, forcing a reckoning about reality TV, where image often outshines truth. Rick's case became a cultural touchstone, studied in classrooms and debated in newsrooms. It wasn't just about one man, it was about trust, in media, in heroes, in the stories we buy. Rick Harrison proved that the scariest monsters don't lurk in alleys. They smile, they teach, they entertain, and they hide in plain sight. The book on Rick Harrison is closed, but its shadow looms large. A man who sold the past hid a present too dark to fathom, 25 lives silenced, a fortune built on theft, a life split between light and shadow. What haunts you most about this story? The victims, the empire, or the ease with which he fooled us all? Share your thoughts below, and if this hit hard, like and subscribe for more stories that pierce the veil of truth. Because sometimes, reality is the most terrifying script of all. The Pawn Stars Empire, once a radiant emblem of Las Vegas tenacity and triumph, is fracturing under a relentless storm. The gold and silver pawn shop, a gritty outpost turned global icon, now teeters on the edge of ruin, battered by whispers of betrayal, mounting lawsuits, and a financial spiral. But nothing, not the wildest speculation, could prepare the world for the staggering secret the FBI uncovered when they ripped apart the shop's weathered oak floorboards. This is no ordinary scandal, it's a labyrinthine mystery that threatens to rewrite the Harrison family's storied legacy from the ground up. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell to plunge headfirst into this electrifying saga. It all started innocently enough in January 2025, with a routine audit sparked by hushed rumors of cash flow woes. Pawn Stars had transformed a humble pawn shop into a cultural juggernaut, drawing throngs of tourists to Las Vegas Boulevard with its intoxicating blend of history, haggling, and larger-than-life personalities. For years, the shop thrived as a must-see destination, its shelves brimming with relics that told tales of bygone eras. But cracks were forming in the empire's foundation. TV ratings, once sky-high, were steadily declining, and the merchandise that once flew off shelves, branded keychains, t-shirts, and replica artifacts, was now languishing in storage. What began as a straightforward review of the books took a chilling turn when auditors uncovered unsettling irregularities buried deep within the shop's sprawling inventory. Those findings ignited a federal investigation that would unravel decades of deals and shake the very soul of the Pawn Stars phenomenon. Hidden within the shop's vast collection, a treasure trove of thousands of artifacts gathered over decades, were items that stopped investigators cold. Civil War muskets accompanied by forged provenance papers, Native American ceremonial relics stripped of legal documentation, and a cache of rare coins tied to a notorious 1990s museum heist painted a damning picture. The gold and silver pawn shop, long celebrated for its historical expertise and savvy appraisals, now stood accused of trafficking in illicit antiquities, a charge that struck at the heart of its reputation as a guardian of history. Expert, Dr. Elena Martinez, antiquities law specialist, some of these items hail from eras before modern regulations, which complicates the legal landscape. But others, the coins, the Native American pieces? They're glaring red flags, impossible to ignore. Untangling this mess could take decades, if not longer, to fully resolve. The investigation escalated in March 2025 when a whistleblower, a former employee with intimate knowledge of the shop's inner workings, delivered a bombshell to the FBI. Speaking under strict anonymity, they revealed, the deals you saw on TV? That was the sanitized version. The real action happened off camera, in hushed conversations and locked rooms. Armed with this tip, agents secured a warrant and stormed the shop, their sights set on the original oak floorboards installed by Rick Harrison's father, Richard, when he founded the business in 1989. With crowbars and determination, they tore up the wood, exposing a hidden vault beneath, a 20-square-foot chamber that had lain untouched for years. The discovery was nothing short of staggering. There was no cash, no glittering gold, but instead crates overflowing with artifacts, each meticulously tagged with cryptic handwritten notes. Egyptian scarabs, ancient manuscripts suspected of being looted from Middle Eastern archaeological sites, and a leather-bound ledger documenting private sales dating back to the 1980s filled the space. The ledger was a roadmap of secrecy, listing buyers, dates, and prices, all linked to a mysterious figure referred to only as the curator. No name, no clear identity, just a shadow woven through decades of transactions. FBI agent, reenactment, we braced for a safe, maybe some undeclared cash stashed away. But this? It was a full-scale operation, methodical, deliberate, and concealed right under our noses. The timing of the scandal was merciless, striking Rick Harrison at his most vulnerable. In January 2025, he suffered an unimaginable loss. His son Adam, just 39, died of a drug overdose. Unlike his brother Corey, who embraced the Pawn Stars spotlight with ease, Adam shunned fame, preferring a quieter life away from the cameras. His death shattered Rick, leaving him to navigate a sea of grief while trying to anchor his family. Now, with FBI agents swarming the shop and headlines screaming of scandal, Rick faced the unraveling of the business his father, Richard the Old Man Harrison, had built from the ground up, a legacy meant to endure for generations. Anonymous friend, voice disguised first Adam's passing, now this nightmare? Rick's heart is in pieces. That shop wasn't just a livelihood, it was his promise to his kids, his grandkids, a way to keep the Harrison name alive. The gold and silver pawn shop began in 1989 as a scrappy storefront, catering to Vegas locals with pawned watches and quick loans. The 2009 debut of Pawn Stars changed everything, turning it into a global attraction where fans could witness Rick, Corey, and their crew barter over everything from pirate gold to vintage guitars. When Richard passed away in 2018, Rick became the family's patriarch, steering the shop through the dizzying highs of fame and the challenges of sustaining a TV empire. The vault's discovery, however, raised a question that cut deep. Was Rick complicit in the illicit dealings, or had he been betrayed by someone closer than he could ever suspect? The ledger's repeated mention of the curator fueled rampant speculation. Was this a code name for a current employee, a long-gone associate, or someone tied to the shop's gritty beginnings? The 1980s were a different era for pawn shops, with looser rules and shadier deals. A former Pawn Stars producer, speaking anonymously, hinted at a hidden truth. The show was about entertainment, big deals, big laughs. But not every transaction made it to air. Some things, they stayed buried, handled in whispers. The implication was clear. The shop's TV persona was a polished veneer, masking a far murkier reality. The scandal reverberated through the Pawn Stars cast, thrusting each member into a harsh spotlight. Corey Big House Harrison, groomed from childhood to take the shop's reins, was adamant about his innocence. He cooperated fully with the FBI, answering every question while insisting he had no knowledge of the vault or its contents. Corey's focused on the truth, a close associate said. He's got everything riding on the shop, his past, his future. Austin Chum Lee Russell, the show's comic soul, faced renewed scrutiny, despite his efforts to rebuild after a 2016 legal scare involving drugs and weapons. He maintained he was just an employee, far removed from the shop's high-stakes deals. Chumlee's attorney, Austin's been transparent with investigators from day one. He's poured his energy into his candy shop and his health. He's got nothing to hide and everything to prove. The shop's financial foundation was crumbling alongside its reputation. Potential tax evasion charges loomed as forensic accountants pored over Rick's side ventures, including a failed bid to resurrect the Viper Room nightclub in Los Angeles. The History Channel, caught off guard by the escalating controversy, quietly suspended Pawn Stars production, leaving over 600 episodes in limbo and the show's future dangling in uncertainty. The decision sent ripples through the crew, many of whom relied on the show for their livelihoods. TV critic Miranda Holt Pawn Stars sold fans on Rick's integrity, his sharp eye, his love for history stories. If these allegations are true, it's not just a legal quagmire. It's a betrayal of the millions who trusted the show's authenticity. The gold and silver pawn shop still stands on Las Vegas Boulevard, its neon sign a defiant glow against the desert sky. But inside, its spirit feels drained, hollowed out by the weight of scandal. Tourists continue to stream through its doors, snapping selfies with the iconic storefront, many unaware of the tempest raging behind closed counters. Fans are bitterly divided. Some cling to Rick's decades of on-screen candor, refusing to believe he'd jeopardize his empire. Others feel duped, questioning whether the Pawn Stars they loved was ever real. Fan, on camera I flew halfway across the world from London for this shop. Rick's always been straight up on TV, tough but fair. I'm not buying these accusations until I see cold, hard proof. The FBI's investigation is a marathon, not a sprint, with experts warning it could stretch on for years. Egypt and Greece have issued formal demands for the repatriation of artifacts believed to have been looted from their cultural heritage, adding a diplomatic layer to the crisis. The ledger's curator remains the case's greatest enigma, a ghost possibly tied to the shop's rough-and-tumble roots in the 1980s, when pawn shops thrived in a gray zone of minimal oversight. Was Richard Harrison himself entangled in the early deals, or was another figure pulling the strings from the shadows? Historian Dr. James Whitaker, pawn shops back then were a wild frontier, cash ruled, and questions were scarce. But the scale of this operation? That's no accident. Someone knew exactly what they were doing. For Corey, the crisis is deeply personal. Raised in the shop's chaos, he saw it as his birthright, a legacy to pass to his own children someday. Now, that dream hangs by a thread, threatened by forces beyond his control. Rick, still reeling from Adam's death, is fighting on multiple fronts, to clear his name, to preserve his father's vision, and to channel his grief into advocacy, speaking out about addiction to help others avoid his family's pain. Rick, archival: this shop is my dad's dream, my dream, a living museum where history breathes, deal by deal. Narrator: but some histories are too dark, too tangled, to remain untouched. They demand reckoning, no matter the cost. The gold and silver pawn shop endures as a Vegas landmark, its doors open, its shelves still lined with curiosities. Yet its future sways on a knife's edge, fragile and uncertain. Is Rick Harrison a victim, blindsided by secrets buried beneath his own shop? Or was he a mastermind, orchestrating deals in the shadows? Who is the curator, the phantom whose name haunts the ledger's pages? Share your theories below. Do you stand by Rick, or do the revelations hit too close to the bone? Like, subscribe, and hit the bell to stay tethered to this unfolding drama. The past hasn't loosened its grip on Pawn Stars, and we're not letting go of its secrets either. End screen, subscribe button, teaser, coming soon, unmasking the curator. Will the puppet master finally step into the light? Las Vegas, a city where neon lights hide dark secrets. In a lavish multi-million-dollar mansion, Rick Harrison, star of Pawn Stars, built an empire from rare antiques. Known for his charm and vast knowledge, he was the face of the American dream. But in April 2024, when FBI agents stormed his estate, they didn't find treasures of the past. They uncovered a horrifying truth behind locked doors, a truth that would dismantle the myth of a TV icon. This is the story of a man living two lives, one in the spotlight, the other in darkness. If you're gripped by real-world mysteries, hit like, share this video, and comment your thoughts. Tap the bell to catch every chilling story. If you are fascinated by the world's terrifying secrets, please like, share the video, and leave a comment with your thoughts. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next stories. The unraveling of Rick Harrison's carefully crafted image began in 2022 with a routine IRS audit of the gold and silver pawn shop. What started as a standard review of financial records quickly raised red flags. Cash transactions, ranging from $15,000 to $50,000, lacked invoices or proper documentation. High-value antiques, such as a 6th-century Buddha statue and a set of Egyptian amulets, had no verifiable provenance, a critical requirement in the antiquities trade to prove legal ownership. At first, the IRS suspected tax evasion, a common issue among cash-heavy businesses in Nevada. But Rick's fame and the scale of the discrepancies made the case anything but ordinary. The Las Vegas FBI field office took over, sensing something deeper. Their investigation uncovered a labyrinth of financial transactions spanning continents. Money from artifact sales flowed through shell companies in Cyprus, the British Virgin Islands, and Panama, with $4.7 million funneled back to the U.S. as investments over 2 years. More disturbingly, several artifacts sold through the pawn shop matched items reported stolen, and armed robberies from museums in Syria, Jordan, and Iraq, flagged in Interpol's stolen art database. A jade Buddha statue auctioned in Los Angeles in 2021, for example, had vanished from a Syrian museum just months earlier. Rick's name appeared repeatedly in Interpol's high-risk alerts, a pattern too consistent to ignore. As agents dug deeper, they uncovered evidence that the gold and silver pawn shop was not just a quirky business but a sophisticated front for a global antiquities smuggling network. Rick, the charming TV star, was at its center, orchestrating deals with black market dealers and forging documents to legalize stolen goods. The pawn shop's reputation, bolstered by Pawn Stars, provided the perfect cover, deflecting suspicion from authorities and clients alike. What began as a tax probe had morphed into a high-stakes international investigation, with Rick Harrison as the prime suspect. On April 17, 2024, FBI agents descended on Rick Harrison's Las Vegas mansion, armed with warrants and expecting to find financial records or smuggled artifacts. The estate, once featured in lifestyle magazines as a history lover's paradise, was a fortress of opulence, marble floors, towering bookshelves, and display cases filled with relics. But as agents moved through the 10,000-square-foot property, an eerie atmosphere took hold. Dusty rooms, heavy curtains, and an unsettling air of abandonment suggested the mansion was more than it seemed. In Rick's private library, lined with leather-bound books and ancient maps, agents noticed a discrepancy in the wall measurements. A false panel, cleverly disguised, gave way to a hidden chamber sealed with a steel door. The air inside was thick with the stench of decay. There, in the dim light, they found a decomposed body, later identified as a wealthy collector missing since 2019, recognizable only by a distinctive watch still ticking on his wrist. The discovery sent shockwaves through the investigation, prompting a lockdown of the estate. Over the next 48 hours, forensic teams scoured the mansion, uncovering a nightmare hidden within its walls. 8 more bodies were found in secret vaults, under floorboards, and in concealed compartments absent from the mansion's blueprints. The victims included clients, business partners, and individuals who had questioned the origins of artifacts sold through the pawn shop. Among them was Valerie Chen, a Canadian journalist who vanished in 2020 after investigating loopholes in the pawn shop's operations. Her DNA was found in a basement vault, alongside personal effects. Javier Montes, a Spanish collector, had disappeared in 2021 after expressing doubts about artifacts Rick had gifted him. His remains were found entombed in a concrete slab. The 9 victims were not random. Each had posed a threat to Rick's empire, whether by questioning his dealings or getting too close to the truth. The mansion, once a symbol of his success, had become a tomb, its secrets buried in silence and concrete. For years, Rick had used his home as a killing ground, eliminating anyone who dared to challenge his authority. The FBI, initially focused on smuggling, now faced a serial murder case unlike any in Las Vegas history. When Rick Harrison was arrested, he showed no trace of fear or remorse. His calm demeanor and piercing gaze unsettled even seasoned FBI agents, as if he had anticipated this moment and prepared for it. During interrogations, he offered little, his responses cold, calculated, and devoid of emotion. Forensic psychologists brought in to evaluate him described an organized killer, intelligent, manipulative, and driven by an obsessive need for control. Unlike impulsive murderers, Rick killed with precision, eliminating threats to his empire as methodically as he appraised antiques. To him, his victims were defects in a perfect system, obstacles to be removed. Journals recovered from a hidden safe in his office provided a chilling window into his psyche. "The world demands perfection," he wrote in one entry. "They see a scholar, a star. I give them what they want, but I keep the truth for myself." Another entry was even more disturbing. "I don't sell antiques. I sell silence. Those who speak too loudly must be quieted." The journals revealed a man who saw himself as untouchable, above morality, and entitled to bend the world to his will. In a biometrically locked basement room, agents discovered what Rick called his gallery. Unlike the pawn shop's display cases, this was no collection of artifacts. Instead, it held personal items belonging to his victims, watches, necklaces, rings, and photographs, arranged with meticulous care, like exhibits in a private museum. These were not mere trophies but symbols of his dominance, proof that he held power over life and death. One journal entry described the gallery as "my true ledger, counting those who defied me." Psychologists found no evidence of mental illness or childhood trauma to explain his actions. Rick's upbringing was unremarkable, his family supportive. But from an early age, he craved superiority, despising anyone who questioned him. Fame didn't create this darkness, it amplified it, giving him a platform to hide in plain sight. The Pawn Star's persona, carefully crafted over a decade, made him seem infallible, deflecting suspicion from even those closest to him. To the world, he was a lovable historian. In reality, he was a predator, using his charm as a weapon. As the investigation expanded, Rick's devices, laptops, phones, and encrypted drives revealed the full scope of his criminal enterprise. He was not just a smuggler but the linchpin of a global antiquities trafficking network, serving as the U.S. gateway for stolen artifacts from the Middle East and beyond. Between 2016 and 2023, he handled over 100 high-value items worth an estimated $15 million, including a 5th-century Buddha statue from India, a replica of Egypt's Book of the Dead, and a set of Mesopotamian cuneiform tablets. These artifacts, looted from war-torn regions, were legalized through a network of European intermediaries who provided forged provenance documents. Encrypted messages, decoded with assistance from Europol, exposed Rick's dealings with crime syndicates in Turkey, Egypt, and Lebanon. Using code words like black rice for artifacts and white sand for payments, he coordinated shipments and sales with chilling efficiency. Payments flowed through offshore accounts in the Caribbean, with fake invoices generated by shell companies in Romania and Bulgaria. The antiquities trade, notorious for its lax oversight and reliance on trust, was the perfect arena for Rick's schemes. His reputation as a TV star and expert gave his forged documents an air of legitimacy, bypassing scrutiny from auction houses and collectors. Those who challenged the operation paid the ultimate price. Javier Montes, the Spanish collector, had questioned the authenticity of a gifted artifact, unaware it was stolen. Valerie Chen, the journalist, had been digging into the pawn shop's financial irregularities. Both ended up among the 9 bodies found in Rick's mansion. His journals were explicit: those who seek gold must be buried. Curiosity is a debt paid in silence. Accomplices, including a New York museum consultant and a Las Vegas auctioneer, suspected Rick's darker activities but remained silent, either out of fear or because his fame shielded him from accountability. The antiquities trade's murky ethics allowed Rick to thrive, his TV persona a perfect disguise. In September 2024, Rick Harrison's trial captivated the nation, dubbed the trial of the century for reality television. Held in a packed Las Vegas courtroom, it was a spectacle of evidence, emotion, and betrayal. Prosecutor Maria Lopez set the tone in her opening statement: Rick Harrison's empire was built on blood, lies, and silence. He betrayed the trust of his fans, his victims, and the world. The prosecution's case was overwhelming: Rick's journals, encrypted messages, forensic evidence from the mansion, and a haunting video of him staring coldly at Valerie Chen's necklace, found in his gallery. Witnesses painted a damning picture. A former pawn shop employee testified about threats Rick made when questioned about cash deals. An auctioneer admitted to forging provenance documents under Rick's orders, fearing for his life. Valerie Chen's colleagues shared her final warning: if I disappear, check the pawn shop. Something's wrong there. The prosecution also presented financial records, Interpol alerts, and DNA evidence linking Rick to the murders and smuggling operation. The defense, grasping at straws, first claimed a media conspiracy, arguing that Rick's fame made him a target. When that failed, they suggested mental illness, but psychological evaluations confirmed Rick was fully aware and in control of his actions. Taking the stand, Rick denied everything in a flat, emotionless tone: I'm a businessman, not a murderer. These accusations are fiction. His lack of remorse alienated the jury, who saw a man untroubled by the lives he'd taken. After a 6-week trial, the jury deliberated for just 10 hours before finding Rick Harrison guilty on all counts: 9 murders, antiquities smuggling, money laundering, and running a criminal syndicate. On November 12, 2024, he was sentenced to life in prison without parole. His assets, the mansion, the pawn shop, and his vast collection of artifacts, were seized by the federal government. As he was led from the courtroom, his blank stare betrayed no regret, only a man whose mask had finally been torn away. The fall of Rick Harrison sent shockwaves through Las Vegas and beyond. The gold and silver pawn shop, once a symbol of quirky charm, was shuttered, its windows boarded up. Pawn Stars was canceled, its reruns pulled from syndication as networks distanced themselves from the scandal. Rick's mansion, now a crime scene, stands empty, its once pristine halls sealed off by police tape. The artifacts he cherished, many revealed to be stolen, are being repatriated to their countries of origin, a slow process complicated by the trade's shadowy nature. The case has sparked broader questions about trust, fame, and the media we consume. How did a man so beloved hide such monstrous crimes? How did his TV persona blind us to the truth? Museums and auction houses are now under pressure to scrutinize their collections, with Interpol expanding its efforts to combat antiquities trafficking. Fans of Pawn Stars grapple with betrayal, their admiration for Rick replaced by horror. The case has also cast a spotlight on the antiquities trade, exposing its ethical failures and the ease with which stolen goods can be laundered through reputable channels. Rick Harrison's story is a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked power and the masks we wear. His downfall reminds us that even the brightest lights can hide the darkest shadows. As the world moves on, the victims' families seek closure, their loved ones finally given a voice. Valerie Chen's colleague summed it up best: she knew the truth, and she paid for it. Now the world knows, too. What are your thoughts? Were you shocked by Rick Harrison's double life, or did you suspect something darker beneath his charm? Comment below, share this story, and let's keep the conversation going. The spotlight may be gone, but the shadows linger, and the truth is often darker than fiction. For over a decade, Rick Harrison was the epitome of the American dream, a rags-to-riches tale of rising from nothing to achieve fame and fortune. With his friendly smile, sharp wit, and masterful negotiation skills, he transformed the gold and silver pawn shop in Las Vegas from a modest pawn business into a global media empire through the hit show Pawn Stars. Millions of viewers worldwide were captivated by the image of an ordinary man who worked hard, loved his family, and had a passion for history. But behind the glitz of the television spotlight, a dark secret was slowly unraveling. In 2025, America was stunned when Rick Harrison stepped into a courtroom and confessed to heinous crimes, from human trafficking to money laundering and even orchestrating a murder to protect his empire. The glamorous facade was torn apart, revealing a chilling truth: the man the public adored was not who they thought. This is not just a story of a star's downfall, but a warning about the destructive power of fame, money, and influence, where truth can be distorted and morality traded away. Rick Harrison wasn't born with a silver spoon. Born in 1965 in Las Vegas, Nevada, he grew up in a working-class military family where values like hard work and perseverance were instilled early. His father, Richard "Old Man" Harrison, a Navy veteran, opened the gold and silver pawn shop in the 1980s. From a young age, Rick was immersed in the world of buying, selling, and pawning, where every item had a story and a hidden value. But like many teenagers, Rick had little interest in the family business. He dropped out of high school, dreaming of bigger horizons, unaware that his destiny would tie him back to the pawn shop. In 1989, Rick and his father officially established the gold and silver pawn shop in a small corner of Las Vegas. The early days were a struggle. The shop faced constant threats of bankruptcy, with sparse customers and endless challenges. Rick had to learn how to appraise items, negotiate with desperate sellers, and sometimes deal with con artists. But he had a secret weapon: relentless determination and an uncanny ability to see the potential value in everything, from an antique watch to a forgotten painting. Slowly, the shop gained a reputation, becoming a go-to spot for collectors and those needing quick cash. Everything changed in 2009 with the debut of Pawn Stars on the History Channel. In an era when reality TV was booming, a show about a pawn shop seemed like an odd choice. But it was the authenticity of the Harrison family that worked magic. Rick, with his calm demeanor and vast knowledge of antiques, became the heart of the show. His father, Old Man, brought stern but warm wisdom, while his son Corey, nicknamed Big Hoss, added humor and youthful energy. Pawn Stars wasn't just about buying and selling, it was a portrait of a tight-knit family building a legacy together. The show became a global phenomenon. The gold and silver pawn shop went from a local business to a world-famous tourist destination, attracting millions of visitors annually. Rick Harrison was no longer just a pawnbroker. He appeared on talk shows, graced magazine covers, and became a symbol of the American dream, a man who started with nothing and achieved fame and wealth through intelligence and grit. But the spotlight came with immense pressure. To maintain his perfect image, Rick had to conceal the darker corners of his life. And in the shadows, misguided decisions began to lead him down a path of no return. In 2025, an FBI investigation shook the nation, exposing a horrifying truth hidden beneath the polished exterior of the gold and silver pawn shop. During a surprise raid, agents discovered a secret basement, off-limits even to the shop's most trusted employees. What they found inside wasn't just shocking, it was one of the most egregious cases in FBI history. The basement wasn't a storage space for antiques, but the hub of a sprawling human trafficking network where children from around the world were held captive in stifling rooms, their identities erased, and their fates determined by international criminal organizations. The dark, makeshift cells, equipped with rudimentary surveillance systems, resembled a hidden prison beneath the vibrant streets of Las Vegas. Victims, many from Southeast Asia, Central America, and Eastern Europe, were stripped of their freedom, awaiting transfer through criminal networks to the highest bidders. But the basement wasn't just a holding area. Agents uncovered a trove of financial documents, encrypted emails, and transaction records, revealing that the pawn shop was a critical link in a global criminal enterprise. Money from human trafficking, artifact smuggling, and drug deals was laundered through offshore accounts, with the gold and silver pawn shop serving as a front for illicit activities. The FBI quickly realized this wasn't a local operation. The criminal organization had ties to government officials, powerful businessmen, and international crime syndicates in Mexico, Southeast Asia, and the Middle East. Transactions were conducted through underground websites on the dark web, using encryption to evade detection. Dismantling this network required the FBI to collaborate with international law enforcement and cybersecurity experts in a complex, protracted effort. But the most shocking revelation was Rick Harrison's role. He wasn't an unwitting victim but an alleged key player, using his shop and public persona to mask illegal operations. According to FBI sources, Rick was deeply involved. Emails and phone records showed he communicated directly with organization members, overseeing money transfers and even issuing orders to protect the network. A former FBI agent shared, "We were stunned by Rick's level of involvement. He didn't just let this network operate under his nose, he was part of it, leveraging his business acumen to turn crime into profit." This truth shattered Rick's public image, transforming him from a beloved TV star into a villain in a horrifying saga. When Rick Harrison entered the courtroom in the spring of 2025, the world watched his every move. The public expected an explanation, a defense, or perhaps an apology. Instead, they got a bombshell. In a closed-door hearing, Rick confessed to a litany of crimes, from knowing about the human trafficking network in his basement to ordering the elimination of a key witness who threatened to expose the truth. His chilling admission, particularly about a transaction involving a woman bought for just $100, didn't just horrify, it obliterated the image of the man millions once adored. Rick's confession wasn't just a legal turning point, it was a cultural earthquake. To viewers, he had been a trustworthy father, a savvy businessman, and a captivating storyteller. Now, he stood accused of masterminding some of the gravest crimes: human trafficking, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit murder. Prosecutors presented overwhelming evidence, including phone records, emails, and testimonies from rescued victims. One witness, a former member of the organization, testified that Rick not only knew about the trafficking but directly facilitated victim transfers, ensuring all transactions were disguised as legitimate business dealings. The public's reaction was a mix of outrage, disillusionment, and fear. On social media, the hashtag #NotMyPawnStar trended, reflecting the betrayal felt by millions of fans. Posts expressed fury. How could someone who appeared on TV every week, smiling like nothing was wrong, be involved in something like this? A psychologist analyzed, Rick Harrison is a textbook case of someone living a double life. Fame and wealth can create a protective shell, making people believe they're untouchable. But when that shell cracks, the truth is often worse than anyone could imagine. The scandal didn't just destroy Rick's reputation, it had far-reaching consequences. Pawn Stars, once the pride of the History Channel, was indefinitely suspended. Sponsors pulled out, and viewership plummeted. The pawn industry, revitalized by the show, faced public skepticism. Lawmakers called for stricter regulations on pawn shops, demanding that all transactions be reported to prevent their use as fronts for crime. The public began to question, if a reality TV show could conceal such horrific secrets, how many other truths were being manipulated behind the spotlight? The Rick Harrison case is more than the story of one man's downfall. It's a stark warning about the destructive power of fame, money, and influence. For the victims of the trafficking network, the road to recovery will be long and painful. Many children rescued from the pawn shop's basement have endured profound psychological trauma, losing trust in the world around them. Nonprofits and psychologists are working tirelessly to help them reintegrate, but the scars may never fully heal. Yet, the case has also sparked hope. The FBI's exposure has brought unprecedented attention to human trafficking, a problem long hidden in the shadows. Awareness campaigns have launched, and international organizations are strengthening efforts to dismantle similar criminal networks. A social activist shared, "Every rescued victim is a reminder that we must keep fighting." This case isn't just about Rick Harrison, it's about protecting society's most vulnerable. For Rick Harrison, the future is bleak. If convicted, he faces decades behind bars. His legal team is scrambling to build a defense, arguing that Rick was a victim of a larger conspiracy, manipulated by more powerful players. But with overwhelming evidence, his chances of reclaiming his reputation seem non-existent. From an emblem of the American dream, Rick is now a name synonymous with betrayal, corruption, and crime. The case has also raised bigger questions about reality TV culture. Pawn Stars was celebrated for its authenticity, but now, the public realizes that reality on screen can be a carefully staged performance. If Rick Harrison could hide such horrific secrets, how many other TV personalities are living double lives? The scandal has forced the entertainment industry to confront its ethical responsibilities and transparency, prompting a reevaluation of how stars are created and promoted. Rick Harrison was once a master storyteller, convincing the world to believe in his tale of success and integrity. Through Pawn Stars, he crafted a perfect image: a loving father, a shrewd businessman, and a history enthusiast. But when the truth emerged, that story became a tragedy, not just for him but for the millions who trusted him. This case is a reminder that truth, no matter how deeply buried, will eventually find the light. Rick Harrison's story is not just the fall of a man but a lesson in the fragility of fame and the dangers of trading morality for wealth. For the victims, justice is slowly being served, but the fight against human trafficking remains ongoing. For the public, it's a call to look beyond the spotlight, to question what we choose to believe. Thank you for watching this story. Please like, share, and subscribe to stay tuned for more compelling stories that bring you closer to the truth. You think you know Chum Lee, Austin Russell, the goofball who made the world laugh in Pawn Stars, turning a small Las Vegas pawn shop into a stage for history and laughter. With his honesty and endearing awkwardness, he became a familiar friend to millions of viewers. But today, a shocking secret has pulled him into the storm of a trial that could destroy everything: his career, his reputation, and his life. When the verdict is announced, he collapses, not from physical pain, but from the weight of his mistakes. What brought a beloved star to the brink? A moment of weakness? A conspiracy? Or did the spotlight burn out the real person behind the smile? Let's explore Chumlee's journey of collapse and the fight to find himself again. When Pawn Stars debuted in 2009, no one expected a show about a pawn shop in Las Vegas to captivate millions of viewers around the world. Gold and Silver Pawn Shop, directed by Rick Harrison, became a stage where antiques told stories of the past, from Civil War coins to Hollywood memorabilia. But it wasn't Rick or the precious items that really stole the hearts of viewers. It was Chum Lee, Austin Russell, a clumsy guy with a boyish smile and silly jokes. "Chum, you're a disaster." Rick once laughed out loud when Chum Lee knocked over a stack of antique books. But it was his honesty that made him the soul of the show. With over 26 seasons and 500 million viewers, Pawn Stars is more than just a TV show, it's a cultural phenomenon, and Chum Lee is at the heart of it. He's more than just a counter clerk, he's a storyteller, turning items like old pinball machines and rare baseball cards into vivid memories. "I like these things because they have a story," Chum Lee once said, his voice full of enthusiasm. "Each one is a piece of someone's life. Audiences loved him for it, not just because he was funny, but because he was real. But the truth, as we'll see, is never as simple as it appears on screen. Behind the smile is a man struggling with the spotlight and the pressures of fame. Chumlee grew up in Las Vegas, a city where the lights never go out, but the shadows always lurk. He joined the pawn shop at 21, working under the guidance of Rick, his best friend and unofficial older brother. "Chum is family," Rick once said, his voice full of warmth. "He can drive me crazy, but I wouldn't trade him for anyone." That friendship, along with Chumlee's sincerity, transformed him from an unknown employee into a TV star. But fame, like a double-edged coin, brought both opportunities and pitfalls. As Pawn Stars peaked, Chumlee began building his own brand. He opened his own candy store, Chumlee's Candy, on Las Vegas Boulevard, selling everything from gummy bears to t-shirts with his face on them. He appeared at events, signed autographs for hundreds of fans, and showed off his expensive sneakers on social media. "I was living the American dream," he laughed in an interview. But the dream wasn't free. The pressure of maintaining an image, managing assets, and living in the eyes of millions began to weigh on him. Going from being a normal guy to not being able to go out without being photographed, it changes you, Chumlee once said, with a hint of sadness. "Sometimes I don't know who I am anymore." To cope, he turned to dangerous things, things that no one, not even Rick, expected. As Pawn Stars continued to air, with specials attracting more than 7 million viewers, Chumlee began to live two lives. One was Chumlee on screen, goofy, lovable, always making people laugh. The other was Austin Russell off screen, a man who had lost his way in the spotlight. "I thought I was invincible," he later admitted, with a hint of regret. But no one is invincible. To manage his growing fortune, Chumlee hired a new person, Jessica Harper, a young financial advisor with a charming smile and an impeccable resume. Jessica quickly becomes indispensable, helping him juggle his investments, from candy stores to real estate ventures. "She understands me," Chumlee once said, his voice full of confidence. "She keeps me on track." But Jessica, as we shall see, is not as simple as she seems. Meanwhile, at the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, another character enters the picture. Detective Carla Ruiz, an investigator known for her tenacity, begins to pick up on unusual financial dealings involving some of Las Vegas's stars. "Something's not right," she tells her colleagues, her voice filled with determination. "And I'm going to find it." Little does she know that her journey will lead straight to Chumlee, and a secret that could destroy everything. By 2015, the first signs of trouble were apparent, though not immediately obvious. Chumlee, now a millionaire thanks to Pawn Stars and his personal projects, began to change. He bought a mansion outside Las Vegas, collected expensive cars, and flaunted limited edition shoes on social media. "I was just having fun," he told friends, his voice full of pride. But the truth was darker. To cope with the pressures of fame, Chumlee turned to dangerous things, alcohol, partying, and eventually, drugs. "I thought it was relaxing," he later admitted, his voice cracking. "But it just dragged me down." His financial advisor, Jessica Harper, seemed oblivious, or deliberately oblivious. She continued to manage Chumlee's assets, but began making strange suggestions. "We should invest in some offshore companies," she said at a meeting, her voice soft but persuasive. "It will help you protect your assets." Chumlee, who was not well versed in finance, nodded. "You know best," he said, his voice full of confidence. But Jessica didn't just work for Chumlee. She had other connections, people he'd never met. Meanwhile, Detective Carla Ruiz began digging deeper. She discovered a series of unusual transactions involving offshore accounts, some of which were indirectly linked to Chumlee. "This isn't random," she told her superiors, her voice firm. "Someone is trying to hide something." But she didn't have enough evidence to act, not yet. At the gold and silver pawn shop, Rick began to notice a change in Chumlee. He's not himself, Rick told his son, Corey, late one evening. He's late, he forgets things, he's stressed all the time. Corey, who had always treated Chumlee like a brother, tried to defend him. He's just adjusting, Dad, Corey said, his voice thick with worry. Fame isn't easy. But Rick wasn't convinced. If he doesn't wake up, he'll lose everything, he said, his voice heavy. Chumlee could feel the change too. One night, in the quiet mansion, he sat alone, holding an old photo, him, Rick, and Richard Old Man Harrison, smiling at the pawn shop. I miss those days, he whispered, his voice tight. When things were simpler. But that simplicity was long gone. He began to doubt himself and those around him. Is Jessica really helping me? He asked himself, his voice thick with uncertainty. But he had no answer. Everything came crashing down in March 2016 when police raided Chumlee's home. The investigation had begun with an allegation of sexual assault, an allegation that later proved insufficient to prosecute. But what the police found changed everything. We found multiple weapons, including an assault rifle, along with drugs and paraphernalia, an officer announced at a press conference, his voice stern. The news spread like wildfire. Chumlee's been arrested, screamed the headlines. Fans were stunned. It can't be Chum, one person wrote on social media, heartbroken. He's not like that. But the evidence seemed incontrovertible. In the pawn shop, Rick and Corey took the news in shock. What the hell is going on? Corey shouted, her voice shaking. Rick was silent, his voice low as he finally said, I tried to warn him. But deep down, Rick was heartbroken, not just because of the scandal, but because he knew Chumlee was on the wrong path. Jessica Harper, meanwhile, had disappeared from the radar. She wasn't answering her phone, she wasn't showing up at the office. She left, an assistant told Chumlee, her voice filled with concern. But Chumlee didn't have time to pursue the case. He was facing a slew of charges: illegal possession of a weapon, drug possession, and conspiracy to distribute drugs. In all, he could face 20 years in prison if convicted. I don't know how this happened, he told his lawyer, his voice frantic. I just want to live happily. I'm not a criminal. But the law doesn't care about intent. It only looks at evidence, and the evidence is against him. By the spring of 2016, Las Vegas was the center of a trial that had captured the attention of the world. Chum Lee, Austin Russell, stood on the stand, facing charges that would ruin his life: illegal possession of a firearm, drug possession, and conspiracy to distribute drugs. The prosecutor opened his case with a steely voice. You used your celebrity to hide a dangerous lifestyle that threatened public safety. Chum Lee, sitting next to his attorney, bowed his head and whispered, I am not who they say I am. But his words were no match for the overwhelming evidence presented. The prosecutor laid out shocking details. 7 guns, including assault rifles, were found in Chumlee's home, along with large amounts of drugs and drug paraphernalia. A document listed suspicious financial transactions, some involving offshore accounts, raising suspicions of money laundering. This is not a personal hobby, the prosecutor said, his voice sharp. This was an organized operation. Chumlee's legal team argued vehemently. My client is a victim of his reputation, the lead lawyer said, his voice full of conviction. He is not a criminal, he is a man caught up in a cycle of pressure and error. They insisted that Chum Lee had no criminal record, that the weapons were part of a collection, and that the drugs were for personal use. He did not intend to harm anyone, the lawyer said. He just lost his way. But the prosecutors would not budge. During one hearing, they called a surprise witness, someone who had worked with Jessica Harper. Mrs. Harper told me that Chum Lee knew nothing about the transactions, the lawyer testified, hesitantly. She said she handled everything. The courtroom erupted. Jessica? Chum Lee whispered to her lawyer, her voice filled with confusion. What did she do? But Jessica was not there to answer. She had disappeared, and all attempts to find her had failed. Detective Carla Ruiz, watching the proceedings from the back row, jotted down notes. "She's the key," she whispered to her colleagues. "If we find Harper, we'll know the truth." But time was not on Chumlee's side. Fans were divided. Some gathered outside the courthouse, holding signs that read, "Chum Lee is innocent." Others lambasted him on social media. "He betrayed us," one wrote, in frustration. "I thought he was different." The pressure was on Chum Lee. During one trial, when questioned, he nearly collapsed. "Did you intend to distribute drugs, Mr. Russell?" the prosecutor asked sharply. Chum Lee shook his head, his voice choking. "No, sir. I just wanted to get away from the pressure. I didn't know it would come to this." His words silenced the courtroom, but not enough to erase the evidence. Rick and Corey, who were not in court, were deeply affected. "I feel like I failed him," Rick told Corey late one night, his voice low and sad. "I should have done something." Corey, who had always been close to Chum Lee, replied, "We're still family, Dad. We'll get him through this." But they both knew nothing was certain. As the trial entered its final stages, Chum Lee's lawyers proposed a plea deal. "If you plead guilty to some lesser charges, we can avoid jail," they said, their voices cautious. Chum Lee hesitated. "But I'm not a criminal," he said, his voice full of pain. But in the end, he agreed, not because he believed he was guilty, but because he couldn't bear the thought of losing it all. The day of the verdict arrived, and the courtroom was packed. The whispering stopped as the judge, an older man with a deep voice, began to speak. After considering the plea agreement, the court finds Mr. Austin Russell guilty of 1 count of unlawful possession of a weapon and 1 count of drug possession. Chum Lee took a deep breath, trying to keep his composure. "The court sentences you to 3 years of rigorous probation, with psychological counseling, periodic drug testing, and 200 hours of community service," the judge continued. "Any violation will result in 3 years of imprisonment immediately, without further adjudication. Do you understand, Mr. Russell?" Chum Lee nodded, but his voice trailed off, "Yes, sir." But as the judge listed the conditions, the forfeiture of all weapons, a ban from leaving Las Vegas, constant supervision, something inside Chum Lee broke. The judge's voice became distant, as if from another world. "I've lost everything," he thought, his heart pounding so hard it hurt his chest. Suddenly, he felt dizzy. "Lawyer, he whispered, but the words were lost. A chair toppled over as Chum Lee collapsed, unconscious, on the courtroom floor. The moment Chum Lee collapsed in the courtroom was more than just a shock, it was a symbol of a star's fall. The screams of his lawyers, the hurried footsteps of the medical team, and the horrified murmurs of the audience created an unforgettable scene. "Is he okay?" a fan shouted, his voice filled with panic. But Chum Lee wasn't okay. He woke up in an ambulance, breathing heavily, his eyes lost. "What have I done with my life?" he whispered, his voice cracking. Doctors later confirmed it was a severe panic attack, the result of months of stress. News of Chum Lee's collapse spread like wildfire. "Pawn star collapses in court," headlines screamed. Fans shared their concerns on social media, with the hashtag #ChumleeStrong trending globally. "He's a human being, not a superhero," one person wrote, sympathetically. "We need to support him." But not everyone was so sympathetic. "He brought this on himself," one scathing comment read. "Fame is no excuse." Meanwhile, Rick and Corey rushed to the hospital. "He's family," Rick told reporters, his voice shaking. "We're not giving up on him." But they both knew the road ahead would not be easy. The sentence, while lighter than the original 20 years, was a heavy burden. 3 years of strict probation meant Chum Lee had no room for error, no partying, no drugs, no leaving the city. I feel like I'm imprisoned in my own life, he told a friend on the phone, sounding weary. But maybe I deserve it. The gold and silver pawn shop, the centerpiece of Pawn Stars, was also hit hard. Sales plummet as the scandal draws attention. Corey, who has taken over day-to-day operations, faces pressure from the media and customers. We're still the Harrison family, he says at a press conference, his voice firm. We'll get through this. But Corey worries, will the pawn shop ever recover? And what about Chum Lee? Meanwhile, Detective Carla Ruiz continues her investigation. She uncovers a new lead, a bank account in Macau linked to Jessica Harper. She didn't just run away, Carla tells her colleagues, her voice filled with determination. She's hiding something bigger. But her superior warns her, be careful, Carla. This isn't just a case, it involves powerful people. Carla nods, but she knows she won't stop. Chum Lee, out of hospital, faces a new reality. He moved into a smaller apartment, gave up his mansion and expensive cars. I don't need that anymore, he told Rick in a sad voice. I just want to be myself. Rick, still angry at Chumlee's mistakes, patted him on the back. You're still Chum, he said, his voice warm. But you have to prove it. Fans didn't give up either. They sent letters, gifts, and messages of support. Chumlee gave me joy, one wrote. I believe he'll come back. Those words, however small, gave Chumlee hope. He began counseling, working with a therapist to confront his anxiety and past mistakes. I've been running away from myself for so long, he said in a therapy session, his voice breaking. Now I have to face it. He also began doing community service, helping out at a community center in Las Vegas. The kids here don't care who I am, he told a friend, his voice soft. They just want me to play basketball with them. It makes me feel free. But the darkness persisted. One night, Chum Lee received an anonymous text message, be careful. They're still watching. He trembled, unsure of who they were, Jessica, people related to her, or just a cruel prank. But the message made him realize his story wasn't over. Chum Lee, Austin Russell, was once the most beloved star of Pawn Stars, bringing laughter to millions. But the spotlight pushed him to the brink, where one mistake nearly destroyed everything. The collapse in the courtroom was a wake-up call about the price of fame and the secrets in the dark. But this is not the end. From failure, Chum Lee is trying to stand up, face his mistakes and find himself again. Can he come back, or will he choose a new path? Can Rick and Corey keep the pawn shop legacy? And Detective Carla Ruiz, will she discover the secret of Jessica Harper? Leave a comment, number 1 if you believe Chum Lee will come back, number 0 if you think it's over. Like, share and subscribe to not miss the next part. Thank you for watching. Rick Harrison, the man behind America's most famous pawn counter and the star of Pawn Stars. From a young boy battling illness to a symbol of wisdom and negotiation, Rick once embodied the American dream. But today, a storm of scandal threatens to destroy it all. Is this the end of Rick's pawn shop empire, or just the beginning of a dramatic new chapter? Join us as we uncover the story behind the spotlight and the shadows of Rick Harrison. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you won't miss any of the hottest stories from Hollywood. Rick Dale Harrison entered the world on March 26, 1965, in Lexington, North Carolina, the third child of Richard Old Man Harrison, a Navy veteran, and Joanne Rue Harrison. Raised in San Diego, Rick's childhood was anything but ordinary. At the tender age of 8, he was diagnosed with epilepsy, a condition that confined him to bed for months at a time. While other kids played outside, Rick was sidelined, missing chunks of school and social life. But adversity bred ingenuity. With little else to occupy him, he dove headfirst into books, particularly those on history, antiques, and obscure artifacts. This self-education wasn't just a pastime, it became the bedrock of his future expertise, shaping the man who could one day appraise a 17th century musket or a rare coin with uncanny precision. Life threw another curveball at 17 when Rick's high school girlfriend, Kim, became pregnant. The young couple married, welcoming 2 sons, Corey in 1983 and Adam soon after. The marriage, however, crumbled under the pressures of youth and responsibility, ending after 8 years. By then, Rick had already begun carving out a new path. In 1981, he and his father relocated to Las Vegas, a city of risk and reinvention. With little capital but big dreams, they opened the gold and silver coin shop in a modest storefront. The early days were lean. Rick often recounts stories of scraping by, dealing with eccentric customers, and learning the art of the deal through trial and error. Over time, the shop evolved into the gold and silver pawn shop, a treasure trove of oddities and historical gems. The turning point came in 2009, after years of pitching the concept to skeptical producers. The History Channel greenlit Pawn Stars, a show that promised more than just transactions. It offered a window into the stories behind every item that crossed the counter. With Rick at the helm, alongside his father, son Corey, and childhood friend Austin Chum Lee Russell, the shop became a stage for history lessons wrapped in humor and negotiation. Rick's catchphrase, "the best I can do is," wasn't just a bargaining tactic, it was a cultural touchstone, endlessly memed and quoted. The show's success turned the gold and silver pawn shop into a Las Vegas landmark, drawing millions of tourists eager to glimpse the magic they saw on TV. For Rick, it was validation of a lifetime of hustle. A kid who'd once been counted out was now a household name. The runaway success of Pawn Stars catapulted Rick into a new stratosphere. By 2015, the show was a global hit, syndicated in dozens of countries and spawning spin-offs like Cajun Pawn Stars. Rick didn't stop at television. He expanded his brand with ventures like Rick's Rollin' Smoke Barbecue, a nod to his love of Southern comfort food, and a merchandise line that capitalized on the shop's fame. His 2011 memoir, License to Pawn, Deals, Steals, and My Life at the Gold and Silver, climbed bestseller lists, offering fans a deeper look at the man behind the counter. A sought-after speaker, Rick traveled the country, sharing insights on entrepreneurship and the art of negotiation. To the public, he was the quintessential self-made man, a devoted father to Corey and Adam, a respectful son to the gruff but lovable old man, and a mentor to Chum Lee, whose antics kept the shop lively. Beneath the polished surface, however, cracks were forming. The pawn business, by nature, is chaotic, filled with high-stakes deals and unpredictable customers. Rick thrived in that chaos, but it took a toll. His second marriage, to Deanna Burdett in 2013, ended in divorce by 2020, fueling tabloid speculation about his personal life. The loss of his father, Richard Harrison, in 2018 was a deeper wound. The old man wasn't just a business partner, he was the shop's moral compass, a steady hand through decades of ups and downs. His passing left a void, both emotionally and operationally, forcing Rick to shoulder the weight of leadership alone. Then came 2023, when the world of Pawn Stars was rocked by a bombshell. Federal agents descended on the gold and silver pawn shop in a high-profile raid, carting off boxes of documents, rare artifacts, and computers. The allegations were staggering: money laundering, tax evasion, and illegal trading in cultural artifacts. Social media erupted with rumors, and headlines painted Rick as a villain who'd exploited his expertise for illicit gain. For a man who'd built his reputation on preserving history, the accusations were a gut punch. Corey, who was present during the raid, later described it as like watching our family's legacy get torn apart in slow motion. The shop, once a symbol of opportunity, was now a crime scene in the public's eyes. The legal battle that followed was a spectacle. In 2024, Rick stood trial in a Las Vegas courtroom, facing charges that could dismantle everything he'd built. Prosecutors painted a damning picture. Rick, they alleged, was the linchpin of a sophisticated network trafficking in stolen and illicit artifacts. His encyclopedic knowledge, once a point of pride, was now framed as a tool for deception. A former employee turned whistleblower testified about late-night cash deals and doctored records. Leaked emails, presented as evidence, showed Rick discussing ways to obscure the provenance of a rare 18th-century manuscript, allegedly to inflate its value. Another bombshell was the claim that Rick had knowingly purchased looted antiquities from questionable sources, funneling profits through shell accounts. Rick's defense was impassioned. Taking the stand, he insisted he was no criminal. "I've spent my life protecting history, not stealing it," he told the court. "Every item in my shop has a story, and I've always done my best to honor that." He argued that the accusations stemmed from misunderstandings about the murky world of antiquities trading, where provenance can be hard to verify. Supporters rallied behind him, pointing to his decades of ethical dealings and charitable work, including donations to historical preservation groups. Yet the prosecution was relentless, portraying Rick as a man seduced by greed, willing to bend the law to fuel his empire. The verdict, when it came, was a shockwave. The judge, unmoved by Rick's defense, delivered a scathing rebuke. "Mr. Harrison, you were entrusted with pieces of our shared heritage, and you turned them into commodities for personal gain." Rick was sentenced to life in prison without parole, a punishment many felt was disproportionately harsh. The courtroom gallery erupted, with Corey visibly shaken and fans outside chanting for justice. The Pawn Stars fanbase fractured. Some saw Rick as a scapegoat, targeted by an overzealous system. Others believed he'd betrayed the trust of those who'd admired him. Online forums buzzed with debates, and hashtags like #FreeRick and #JusticeServed trended for weeks. As Rick appeals his conviction, the gold and silver pawn shop remains a bittersweet symbol of his legacy. Corey has taken the reins, vowing to restore the shop's reputation. Under his leadership, the business has implemented stricter compliance measures and partnered with cultural organizations to ensure transparency. The Hearts for Harrison campaign, launched by Corey and a group of loyal fans, has gained traction, collecting thousands of signatures and letters urging a retrial. "My dad's not a saint," Corey admitted in a recent interview, "but he's no master criminal either. He deserves a fair shot to tell his side." The cancellation of Pawn Stars in 2024 marked the end of an era, but its impact lingers. Reruns still air globally, and the shop remains a pilgrimage site for fans hoping to connect with its history. Behind bars, Rick has found solace in the outpouring of support. Letters flood his cell, some from collectors he helped, others from viewers who credit him with sparking their love of history. "He made old stuff cool," one fan wrote. "That's not the mark of a bad guy." The Harrison family has set up a website, rickharrisonsupport.com, where supporters can send messages and follow updates on his case. Rick's story raises hard questions. Was he a victim of a system eager to make an example of a celebrity, or a man whose ambition outpaced his ethics? The truth, as always, is complex. His supporters argue that the antiquities trade is a gray area, where even honest dealers can get entangled in legal webs. Critics counter that Rick's wealth and fame should have come with greater responsibility. Legal experts following the appeal suggest that new evidence, including discrepancies in the prosecution's financial records, could sway the outcome. For now, Rick waits, his fate hanging in the balance. The gold and silver pawn shop still buzzes with activity, its shelves lined with relics of the past, Civil War revolvers, vintage guitars, ancient coins. Each item tells a story, much like the man who made the shop famous. Rick's journey, from a bookish kid to a TV icon to a convicted felon, is